What is everyone's favorite band? I very fondly remember my friend from high school introducing me to the band. It was the time when Power Windows had come out and we were on a road trip to their family's cottage. We started with Power Windows and I was in such awe he then put in tape after tape as we made a 4.5 hour one-way trip. We proceeded to listen all weekend with our boombox. When he put in 2112, I was hooked. Who makes a 20-minute sci-fi song, especially one with such a dark story. It was such a great experience, one of those pivotal moments in my life. I really expected Rush to be represented much higher in this thread. Came to say this, had some truly dark days in my time, and no one taps that War of Sorrow like Lane and Jerry. They played heavier than everyone else in grunge, but harmonized like a folk band. And that's not to dismiss Sean and the Mikes, cause they could fucking play too. They wrote hauntingly dark lyrics that blew everyone else out of the water most of the time. They couldn't fucking miss. Alice in Chains is the soundtrack for The Weary, and even the reincarnation with William is heavy and raw to this day. Ache Forever. That Unplugged album was magical, one of the greatest of all time. When Lane Staley comes walking out during Nutshell and proceeds to enter a different dimension and sing those songs into reality was, like I said, magical. Edit, a fellow Reddit user pointed out that on this exact date, July 30th, in 1996 the Unplugged album was released. There was that magic from another dimension again. Yup, Soundgarden. Then Audioslave and solo work. Don't know why I gravitate to his music, definitely my most favorite songwriter. Honestly didn't surprise me when he passed. I knew one day it would come. The only thing I could recall that day was remembering the line, "No is gonna do me in before I do myself" on Blow Up the Outside World. I'm so glad I got to experience him live at least once. Evil Empire came out when I was around 11 and it changed how I viewed music. I read a quote once that said, "The best part about Rage is that their music is still so relevant. The worst part about Rage is their music is still so relevant." Either way their energy was electric and raw, and I'll never forget the first time I heard Bulls on Parade as a kid. Watching people's reaction videos to them makes me smile that they're still being discovered. Seen Maiden 28 times live. In my eyes they are by far the best live band ever. First saw them at Monsters of Rock in Donington 1988 and was totally blown away by them. I met Bruce Dickinson once when he came to visit my work. I was an RAF aircraft technician and had to give him a tour of one of our aircraft. It's always a relief when your hero turns out to be a top bloke. Holy shit. Didn't think I'd see anyone else put them in this thread. I've been a fan of them since before I'm Like a Virgin Losing a Child came out and somehow even thought their style has changed drastically. I still love everything they've put out. I've had Telepath stuck in my head for like the last 2 days. Andy Hall is a goddamn genius. I lived in a crappy apartment around the time In Rainbows released. Paper Thin Walls. Most of the residents were college kids in their first place that had zero respect for their numbers. The guy I shared a bedroom wall with bought a record player, amp, and vintage speakers. That must have set him back a bit, because he owned exactly one record, In Rainbows. This dude blasted In Rainbows morning, noon, and night. Wake up at 6 a.m. In Rainbows. Get home from classes at 11. In Rainbows. Smoking weed all afternoon. In Rainbows. Getting ready to go out for the night. In Rainbows. Come home stumbling drunk at 3 in the morning. In Rainbows. I was going out of my mind. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't escape In Rainbows. I actually cut a hole in my bedroom wall to access the wiring. Paper Thin Walls, remember? And determine which ones were his. Each unit only had a couple of circuits. It really was a crappy building, and the bedrooms and living rooms were on a single one. I could get at the back of his electrical outlet and short it out with a screwdriver I held with a towel. That would kill the power and stop the music, and I could hear him cursing on the other side, blaming his amp for tripping the breakers. This was pretty crazy. and I was afraid of burning the place down, so I only did it in desperate situations. But knowing I had some measure of control over his fucking in rainbows sessions was enough to get me through the end of the lease. So, yeah, I'm more of an Amnesiac fan. I'll never forget the day I purchased OK Computer. I lay down on my bed and listened to it all the way through from beginning to end and almost cried. I came out of the bedroom and told my wife I just heard my generation's Dark Side of the Moon. They have never disappointed since then. Their music transcends and have influenced so many. This is an amazing album. The song Jeremy is a gut punch for me as it is based on the true story of a 15-year-old called Jeremy who killed himself in English class. Some background to me though. I am 46 now. I listened to all grunge and grew up through my teens and 20s along with UK bands like the Wild Hearts, Terror Vision and Ned's Atomic Dustbin. The Wild Hearts were my favorite band and went to at least 4 or 5 concerts per tour. Anyway, in 2006 I had a serious mental health breakdown. Took me 4 years to have a breakthrough, but all the bands from the 90s I grew up with I cannot listen to anymore as they send me down a spiral into my bad mental state. I deleted around 100 GB of MP3s and sold around 350 CDs just to get away from it all. I am still trying to find new music to listen to. At the moment I am listening to 60s stuff like CCR and others from that era. My mental state is fine at the moment but can go down without warning. Thank you all for taking time to read. Hijacking to repost my love of MCR. I know they get a lot of hate, but man I just love them. The core 4, gender-bending D&D enthusiast and vocalist Gerard Way, bassist and little brother Mikey Way, rhythm guitarist and pint-sized rage machine Frankie Arrow, and of course the unforgettable guitar god that is Ray Toro, are a fantastic story of a bunch of painfully uncool men who seemingly became a sensation overnight before fizzling out. They were the face of Hot Topic and Twilight and people hated it. They embraced it and rejected it at the same time. Their 4 full studio albums are fantastic, in-depth, at times messy rock operas, and if listened in order show the direct evolution of the band's talents. Plus, The Black Parade is the best 70s album of the 2000s. Queen. Every member of Queen was a musical freak of nature. Brian is a guitar god. Roger's drums complemented everything the other 3 did flawlessly. John Deacon's bass held it all together, and Freddie was obviously Freddie. And all of them wrote hits. Freddie obviously wrote a lot. Brian wrote The Show Must Go On, Roger wrote Radio Gaga, and DC wrote Another One Bites the Dust. I used to think Muse was alright. But then I went to a show where they played with 30 Seconds to Mars, who were extremely disappointing, fuck Jared Leto, and they put on an absolutely phenomenal live show that made me like the band even more. If you ever have the chance to see Muse live, please do so. I saw both on the same tour. I liked both and went spontaneously. Totally agree with your take. Jared made my throat feel vicariously scratchy. Muse were so good. One of the best nights of my life. Despite having nosebleed seats, they were my first concert too, so they set the bar high for all future concerts. I attend. Haha. My late husband's favorite band. We saw them live. I remember when he first discovered them he played no other bands for a solid month. At home, the truck, everywhere all the time. Funny thing was years prior I'd occasionally play a favor House Atlantic. The Dark Side of Me was his favorite. Such a beautiful song. I love it too. Royal Blood and Queens of the Stone Age are 2 of my favorite bands. Went to see the Kates of Villains tour when Royal Blood was opening for them, but Royal Blood hopped off the tour just a few stops before the show I went to. Huge bummer. Skeptical, still waiting for RB to come back and play a show in the Seattle area, but I doubt it'll happen anytime soon. At this point I'd be willing to drive a long way to catch a show. Not a huge Slayer fan. They're great, I just don't listen to them much, but my first concert ever was a Slayer concert in Pittsburgh with my friend. I'll never forget, we were tailgating waiting for the doors to open to the venue, and this friendly fella came over to us. The concert hasn't even started yet and he'd already killed 12 beers and was visibly drunk. He punctuated every sentence by quietly going Slayer to himself. "Aw, nice to see young kids are still into this kind of music, man. Yay. Slayer seemed like a cool dude. I sincerely hope he didn't get alcohol poisoning." Imagine this, Slayer concert is over around 11 p.m. and a couple thousand fans are released onto the streets of Asheville, NC. One person yells out "fucking Slayer," then a couple thousand people start screaming "fucking Slayer" at the top of their lungs. Now imagine what the other people on the streets that had no idea that there was a Slayer concert that night were thinking. Genesis. I was 15 and listening only to Top 40 radio. Genesis had a minor hit. I liked it. For Christmas I asked for a bunch of LPs, and I included Genesis' self-titled album Genesis from 1983. My mom didn't really grok the idea of a self-titled album. She thought it meant just anything, buy any album, so she bought the one that looked prettiest to her. https://https://385B7C0OF94CC3562A87CC85F699.1000 by 1000 by 1.jpg. I was like, WTF is this? And shelved it. Didn't listen to it for months. Then one night, doing my homework, I was bored with all my other music and figured, what the fuck. I finally took it out of its shrink wrap and put the album on. I want to sort of make a list of the top 40 bullshit I was listening to and tell this, to give you some context. But honestly, it doesn't matter exactly what I was listening to. This album would have completely blown my mind no matter when I grew up. Nothing I'd ever heard sounded like this. It changed my life. Right on. Metallica is one of my all-time favorites. They were my first concert too when they were touring for Death Magnetic. Kicked so much ass. Brave of you to say they're your favorite. There seems to be a shitty rule in the metal community that you're not allowed to actually like Metallica, haha, but they're awesome, no matter what people say. I was going to write a long defending post. Metallica fucking rocks my socks off. Hands down one of the most influential bands in the genre, and beyond. Being my absolute favorite band for over 10 years now. Ain't nothing wrong with a little Metallica. Proud member of the family. They're so much more than the Black Album. Yeah. I'm one of the best bands to come out this generation. First time I listened, it just feels so new, fresh, and different. It's very abrasive, and I think that's what works for them. You have to genuinely open yourself to the music, and just let it take you. I went from listening to only their hits, No Love, I've Seen Footage, etc., and then started branching out more and more. Only when I listened to their albums all the way through, did I gain a huge appreciation for what they've done for hip-hop. Without a doubt my favorite band of all time. A British band called Elbow. For about 20 years they've been on the very cusp of mainstream but never quite broke through. They've won dozens of awards and critics love them, but no one seems to know them. The lead singer and writer Guy Garvey is an absolute poet, and I never thought it possible that formless emotion could be made so tangible with words and instrument. I genuinely try not to listen to them around other people because so many of their songs make me cry. Tom Waits. Just as a general rule, he touches a lot of different projects and works with a lot of different musicians, most of whom are some of the best in their class respectively. Nothing will ever come close to his ability to write a damn good song though. People throw out singer-songwriter all the time as a thing they do, and that's all well and good. But rarely do you find people that make it an art form like Tom Waits. Each song is well crafted, musically played, and sits as a testament to the writing duo that is him and his wife, Kathleen Brennan. What gets me the most is his absolute bravery with everything. Tom Waits' voice was best described as gravel put through a diesel engine that's powered by whiskey and, While true, he maintains a level of musicality that just can't be beat. The guy can honk, croon, whatever. He'll make you cheer, he'll make you laugh, he'll make you roar in defiance, and then he'll make you cry. I'm lucky enough to be one of those people that can cry to music, and Tom Waits has the highest record in that regard. My dad and I are huge fans of Korn. We went to a Korn and Breaking Benjamin concert last year in January before COVID shut everything down. It was my first ever Korn concert and it marked my dad's 9th Korn concert. He's been listening to them since their first album Korn, and I grew up in him listening to Korn 3 Remember Who You Are. We always talk about hidden gems on some of their mid-2000s albums in the car. We're planning on seeing their tour later this summer with another one of our favorite bands, Stayed. This is very hard to define for me, so sorry for the paragraph 1 I'm gonna end up writing. Anyhow, my parents are old. My dad just turned 63 and my mother 60. Growing up I heard 3 decades of music, 60s, 70s and 80s. The 80s were my favorite and still are. Why? I don't know, but just to name a few: Foreigner, Bon Jovi, Skid Row, Metallica, Judas Priest, W.S.P. All your 80s metal all the way to the likes of Wham, Cyndi Lauper, Madonna, Michael Jackson, and everything in between. In high school I was a huge metalhead, and also in high school I got into studying foreign languages and I ended up listening to music from other countries. I know a lot of Russian singers and groups, but I have also listened to music from most other European countries as well. I know I didn't quite answer what my favorite band is, but this was hard for me to answer. Sorry for the paragraph and thanks for reading. I don't know if the magic would have clicked quite as much without John Lennon. I know it is seemingly frowned upon nowadays to give John any credit, but still, I feel Paul knew how to write the perfect pop song and John really had a knack for breathing weird emotional life into it. Paul is still a god, mind you. Arctic Monkeys. I even ended up getting their 5th album cover tattooed on my arm. Then a couple weeks later I met a girl online who had gotten the same thing. We started chatting and hit things off right away. We spent 4 years in a long-distance relationship, USA, UK, but for the last 3 years have been married and living together. Arctic Monkeys literally changed my life for the better. 2020 pandemic turned me from a first-year of college enthusiast to a confined anime enjoyer. With that, I started listening to more and more Japanese music. Before 2020, my fav band was Panic! At the Disco, mostly because of their sound, but nowadays I can safely say it's Roselia. Roselia is a J-rock band from the gacha game Bang Dream, with fictional band members, but the voice actors of the characters perform live from time to time. I really love their sound, but I also like this vibe they've created around the band of perfectionism and passion for a craft. If anyone's willing to give it a listen, I'd recommend Seal of Proud, Sunkai Stridonite, Safe and Sound, and Sanctuary Smiles. All time, 21 Pilots. Maybe a tad cliché, but their music helped me through severe depression and lifts my spirits whenever I hear them. Right now, probably Coldplay. I'm a musician, guitar, ukulele, and piano, so their songs are always fun to play. Some are more simple while others propose a challenge, which I like. Acidic vaginal liquid explosion generated by mass amounts of filthy fecal fisting and sadistic septic syphilic sodomy inside the infected maggot-infested womb of a molested nun dying under the roof of a burning church while a priest watches and ejaculates in a man's perverse pleasure over his first fresh fetus. But really, it's mgla. Right now, I really like Nothing But Thieves. I was a huge Radiohead fan, and around 2005, they started going in a direction that I felt Muse was going also. Except, at the time, I felt Muse was doing it better. So, for the next decade or so, I really loved Muse, except they sort of got a bit too weird for me when they started adding dubstep into their albums. But then I started to hear Nothing But Thieves and really liked them. To me, It almost seems like a similar band came along and carried the torch to this made-up band I had in my mind. I don't hate on a band for trying new things. I don't like the same music I did 20 years ago, so why should I expect a band to stay stuck in the same type of music their whole careers? I applaud them for changing it up and evolving. It's just unfortunate that my tastes and the band's direction don't always line up. So, I have this fake band. I guess it's a version of Radiohead that has kind of evolved with my taste, and it's taking some albums of Radiohead music and now nothing but thieves. Also, I would like to give an amazing shout out to the Mars Volta. Their first album is one of my favorite albums of all time. They quickly got too weird for me, but that first album is something else. When I heard it, I really thought I was witnessing the change in music, and this would bring in an entirely new genre. Instead, it turned way too experimental. I even went to see them live, and almost fell asleep when they just sort of jammed, except it wasn't a real jam because they kind of just used feedback and other weird gimmicks instead of riffing back and forth with each other.